Hey, hi, this is Jamie with Stonemeyer Games, and today is a great day because today the Pie in the Sky expansion pre-order is live on our website. Hopefully you just caught that beginning of the video here. So My Little Scythe is a game that we published a couple years ago, and Hobie, the designer of it, has been working on this expansion for quite a while, and we're finally accepting pre-orders now. I will say that I'm getting a little glitch here. I don't know if you can see a glitch. Let me know if you are seeing the camera just fine. It's doing a weird little glitchy thing for what I'm seeing. So let me know if it's glitching for you too. I could start over the stream if it continues to glitch. It's like kind of flashing every few seconds. Hi, Carol. Hi, Mackenzie. Yeah, let me know if it looks okay to you. I'll just maybe minimize the screen and move forward. Sort of weird glitch thing. So let me check in the comments here just to make sure that it's going okay. So if someone can confirm, okay, Tony says it looks good. It's not glitching on their end. Maybe it was just for a few seconds. It looks like it's gone now. Awesome. So yeah, I just sent out our monthly e-newsletter with the pre-order link for Pie in the Sky. And I've talked about it before, but let me see if there's any highlights in it. So it's $20 on our website. I also put the core game on sale on our website in case you don't have the original game of My Little Scythe. And it's good to finally fill this insert. So we left a few slots in the original insert tray for My Little Scythe for 2 new factions, and those 2 factions are now included in Pie in the Sky, along with an airship, hence the name Pie in the Sky. We kind of designed this box out after as if there's a pie in the box. There's no actual pie in the box, but it plays off the idea that you get in pie fights in My Little Scythe instead of kind of real life combat like in Scythe. Let me put my topics here on the screen today, and I also have my e-newsletter up on my other screen. If you are looking for the e-newsletter, you can find it on the link on this video. I put a link up in the description, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Dick says, "Why are you wearing orange? Dutch King's Day was this past Wednesday, past Monday." Okay, well, congrats on having the latest King's Day. This is my Stonemeyer Games T-shirt, so that's why I'm wearing it. I usually wear this for videos on pre-order days, like today. Let's see. Christopher says he's shocked that there's no actual pie in the box. Yeah. I'm looking over here at the top at the e-newsletter to see if there's any topics I have in regards to My Little Scythe Pie in the Sky. I guess I can show you a few things since that's the big news today. Let me see if I can dig some of this stuff out of the box. I must admit, I'm a little disoriented because I had a fun topic to talk about today to add to my list of questions, and I had it in the shower and then I totally blanked on it. So I'm thrown off by this fun topic that I wanted to bring up. This is a fun topic too, though, but it was a fun question that I was genuinely curious about, and then I totally forgot what it was. Where are the new factions? So the new factions are down here at the bottom of the tray. There's the owl and the Arctic fox. And there are 2 owls. One is just slid back over there a little bit, and they all fit into the original insert. And all the components, I don't want to hold it up because they will slide if I hold it up vertically, but all the other components are, of course, in the bottom of the insert tray of My Little Scythe. The airship was designed to actually split in half, and so it can fit into the original insert. Chad says, "How hard was it to decide not to have every player have their own airship?" It was a fun design choice. I can't remember exactly what went into that decision, but it was largely kind of a design choice by Hobie to add that element of collaboration between players, this kind of push and pull, that I might pull the airship towards me and then someone else might pull it someplace else. But when I pull it towards me, I might be helping some other players around me, or I might send it off into the world and help some other players. So I don't remember us debating all that much that each player should have their own airship. I think it probably started out that way because it was a little bit inspired by the Wind Gambit, but I don't think it lasted for very long as soon as Hobie had that idea to have players share the airship in Pie in the Sky. Daniel says, sand, question mark. Uh, I guess people do have questions about one of our future code names, one of our games that we will release in the future. But as you know, I don't talk about games until I talk about them. So I appreciate your curiosity about it. But today is all about pie in the sky, not about sand. So we're talking about this one today. And later in the future, we'll talk about sand. Carol says, did I see that adventure? Actually, I just remember the question. That's awesome. Carol, you just prompted me to remember the question. You're the best. Let me write it down before I forget again. Okay. So Carol's question, which is not my question, but it's related. It says, did you see the Adventures in Neverland game that launched on Kickstarter yesterday? After talking about Hook last week, it sounded like something you would look at. I'll take a look at it. I'm not actually enamored itself by Neverland, but I just loved the movie Hook as a kid. But I should check it out just in case. The art, I did see a few people back and the art popped up in my inbox, but I haven't checked it out. Chad says, is there a pie scent or scratch and sniff pie sticker in the box? That would be cool. I have actually looked into adding scents to our products, namely when I had when I was releasing the realistic resource tokens, I thought about adding scents to like the fruits. So the little orange token could not just look like an orange, but also smell like an orange. But I discovered there were some issues with it. The smells could blend together in the box and that could trigger some allergies for some people. So I decided not to pursue that. So we don't have any scents in this box, but that would be cool if it smelled like a warm apple pie when you opened up the box. Archer says, would I be willing to make a Sunday sit-down video exclusively on Magic the Gathering? I feel like you love it, and there's plenty of design choices, mechanisms to unpack you guys elsewhere. I actually think I have done one. I think I did a video about, I think I did my top 10 mechanisms or keywords in Magic the Gathering. So if you search on my channel for Magic, you should be able to see a Sunday sit-down video, maybe from either a year or 2 years ago about that topic. If anyone can find it while you're watching this video, feel free to post it in the comments so Arthur can see it. Joshua says he tried to show his daughter Wingspan, but it was too much for her. She felt very overwhelmed. Recommendations for gateway engine building games. Well, actually, I mean, we're talking about Pie in the Sky and My Little Scythe. It does have engine building elements, and it is designed for families. So it is designed for parents to play with kids. So there are plenty of other games I could recommend from other publishers too, but since I'm talking about this game today, that is kind of a great gateway game that has engine building elements to it. James Hudson's joining us today, and he says he's wearing his Stonemaier Vineyard shirt. Thanks for wearing that shirt, James. It's a shirt that MeepleSource makes. It's one of my favorite shirts. They did a great job with designing the shirt and the material I love. Made me fall in love with the Bella canvas material of t-shirts. I'm not wearing it today. I'm wearing my normal Stonemaier Games t-shirt. But James, I'm glad you're wearing your Stonemaier Vineyard shirt. Allie says, is there a rhythm to publishing games and expansions? Maybe there should be, but things just kind of happen for me in Stonemaier Games. Like I publish a game and then I might have an idea for an expansion right away, or I might need a break from the game for a while before coming back to an expansion, or I might not come back for a while and someone might recommend an expansion idea to me and that triggers something. There are games where I've designed back-to-back expansions and games that have gone for a long time without having any expansion. So I wouldn't say there's a set rhythm to it. That's a good question though. I do have topics to cover today, but let me answer a few more questions. I don't want to lose any of them as Facebook scrolls upward. Kevin says, will the Tapestry expansion have any new game-changing mechanisms, or will it mostly be more content? Again, I appreciate your enthusiasm for that, Kevin, but I won't be talking about that expansion for a little while, especially since today our focus is on the Pie in the Sky expansion. I know you all are curious, partially because on the newsletter that I just sent out that you can see in the description here, I always include updates about like project status, the project status for our various projects. And so you can see that certain projects have been moving forward at a nice pace, including the Tapestry expansion. Carol recommends Splendor as a simple engine building game. I totally agree with that. She says, did you take out the personal goals with Wingspan? Oh, she's talking to Joshua about ways to simplify Wingspan a little bit for maybe a younger audience. Isaac says he heard there were some good Pie in the Sky reviews out there. I don't know if the reviews are good or not, but I do know that there are some reviews for Pie in the Sky that are linked on our on our website. And Isaac was one of the reviewers who was kind enough to review an advanced copy of the expansion. I'll answer one more question, and then I'll maybe mention a random topic, or I'll throw out a question to you, that question that I had that I almost forgot. Brian says he likes Scythe. How different is My Little Scythe? I don't have kids, so I don't know if My Little Scythe would be a good addition to the collection. Well, I'd recommend that you check out some videos about it or reviews. I think that'll definitely answer the question much more clearly than I can, but it's kind of like a very distilled down version of Scythe. It still has you choose one action on your turn, and you can't choose that same action on subsequent turns. It has the hex-based map, but it doesn't have multiple types of characters. You just have 2 characters, and they are functionally identical. Rather than in Scythe, you have workers and airships and mechs and your character, which all do different things. So everything is kind of related, but very distilled down in My Little Scythe. For comparison, the rulebook in Scythe is 32 pages. In My Little Scythe, I believe it's 8 pages. So the question that I was going to ask you all today that I'm curious about is, I was thinking about this yesterday because I saw a game on Kickstarter that looked really awesome. But I realized that it was in a genre of games where I am really happy with the games of that genre that I already have in my collection. And because of that, I was thinking that I probably wouldn't back it, or I kind of saved it with the option of backing it later. And I'm wondering if that's true for you. If there are any genres of games, maybe themes, maybe mechanisms, either one, where you are so happy with the games that you already have in your collection, maybe even if it's just 1 or 2 of them, that you don't even really consider other games of that genre. That may not be true. I know for me, for sure, there are genres where that's not true at all. I'm always open to another engine building game, another I Cut You Choose game, another worker placement game. But there are certain genres and mechanisms where I think that I'm really happy with the games that I already have in my collection. And so I think I'm less open to other games of that genre. I'm sure it's highly subjective, but I'm curious if any of you think that same way about some of the games that you have in your collection. That was my question of the day. I have a few other questions, but I'm very curious about that. James says, in past live streams, you've mentioned some trading card game style games that you've enjoyed. Have you ever considered designing an expandable card game or a living card game, potentially in one of the worlds that you've made? I have considered, we've had some discussions about that on Livecast and in various groups about living card games in particular. And it is a genre that I'm considering designing a game, and I'm playing around with it. But I've found that one of the challenges is it's tough for me to design around expandability. The way that I typically design is to put everything that I think needs to belong in the core box in the box, and put all the ideas that work and are fun and functional in that box, and pretty much put everything in that box, and don't save anything for expansions. And later on, if an expansion idea comes up, I might add it later. So it's tough for me to design around the idea of starting with something, but also designing the next 3 sets, or preparing to expand beyond that. It's also a little weird for me to design around the idea of pre-constructing anything for the game, which seems to be a core tenet of a living card game, that before the game, you design something, usually a deck of cards that is unique to you. And usually always I like to do that during the gameplay process itself, not before the game happens. So it's been weird trying to design around it. It may or may not happen. I might just end up with a deck building game, for example, rather than a game that you need to pre-construct and that has planned expandability. I'm intrigued by it, though. Matthew says, got any tips on dealing with licensing one game to foreign publishers? That's a big topic, Matthew. Let me think if I can give you one tip, but the biggest tip I can recommend is searching StonemayerGames.com for the word localization. And I think it's Kickstarter lesson number 198 that deals with localization, and that will give you all the tips that you really need for it. What is one tip that I can really recommend? I would say one thing to keep in mind from the very start is communication. So if you send an email to someone who's interested in licensing your game and they don't reply for a few weeks, that can be a red flag right off the bat. Maybe consider someone else. So keep an eye out for early red flags. And beyond that, read that article. I think that'll really help. It does look like Facebook is starting to skip forward beyond questions that I have not answered yet. So if I missed your question, feel free to repeat it, and I'll look at it in the comments. Zach says, I know you snuck in a little spoiler in this Sunday sit down that you had playtested some future games with customized dice. He says, so how are these sand-filled dice going to work? And I think he's trying to get clues about codename Sand. Amy says, what version of Rolling Realms are you up to? Haven't heard any changes lately. Last week I played version 9. I have revised it for version 10, but I haven't. There were very small revisions, so I haven't put it out there yet. I don't have a planned date for a playthrough yet for version 10. Oh man, Facebook is scrolling past a ton of questions, so I'm definitely going to miss some here. Feel free to repeat them in the comments. I'm sorry if I'm missing them. Allie says, tell us about Forgotten Waters. How many people did you play it with? What was your experience? I'd actually recommend checking out my video about Forgotten Waters if you want the details about that. I just posted a video a couple days ago about it, maybe last week. And we played with 2 players. We played through one scenario, and I enjoyed it. There's some good mechanisms in it. It's a great storytelling game. Alexa found the video about Magic the Gathering awesome, and Cody did too. Thank you too for doing that. JQ says, to support great businesses during this troubling time, is it better to order your games through local shops or through your website? That's a great question, because you can support 2 businesses if you order through local shops, or just Stonemaier Games if you order through our website. We certainly do get a higher percentage of the profits if you order through us. At the same time, it is important to me that the infrastructure of local game stores persists. So if you have a local game store that you feel really passionately about, that you love, that does a great job in supporting you as a customer, absolutely. Now is a great time to support them, and we'll still indirectly get a little bit of money from that too. If you feel much more passionately about Stonemaier Games itself, I would say order directly from us. Federico says that his copy of Wingspan arrived. Any suggestions about it? I suggest using the Swift Start guide for your first play, but still make sure that someone reads the rule or watches a rules video about it, and then use the Swift Start guide for all other players. They can kind of just guide them through their first few turns. Yeah. Sabrina says, can I make a Wingspan legendary box to fit everything? We will. Well, I don't want to commit to it. I'm saying it's very likely that we will do that someday. However, we want to wait to do that until we know exactly what's going to be in all of the future expansions. All the expansions are focused on a new continent, a different continent. And I don't want to come out with a big box and then 2 years later realize that not everything fits in that box because we decided to include a 2-foot penguin miniature in the Antarctica expansion. So we're not going to actually do that. But you can get what I'm saying. I don't know exactly what's in the future expansions yet. Elizabeth doesn't either. We have ideas. We've talked about it, but we don't know exactly. So when we get to that point, when we do know, that's when we'll come out with a big box. It'll be, I think, a big empty box with a nice organizer inside of it. Cody says, I know sometimes you use the term mechanism rather than mechanic. Do you do so intentionally or out of habit? I actually try to only use the word mechanism. I know the word mechanic can be used either way, but when I say mechanic, I think of like a car mechanic, an engineer. Mechanism to me only has one meaning, so I use it for game design mechanisms. So many questions here, so many questions that I'm missing. Again, feel free to repeat them when I miss your question here. And actually, let me look away from questions for a minute and see if there's any important topics that I really need to cover. I'll just race through them a little bit. Some games that I played recently. I played Shadow of Salvation, which was the expansion, the cooperative expansion for Shards of Infinity. It was fantastic. And I really look forward to playing through that again. We're also currently in the middle of Machi Koro Legacy, having a great time with that. And my video this past week on Sunday was about dice-driven games. That was fun. I've been making some great progress on a game in terms of the game design, and 2 games really. And we've been using Tabletopia, and I use actually Tabletop Simulator for playtesting recently. Great platforms, but I really miss playtesting in person with real components. It's just so much easier to play. Hopefully we can get back to that soon. My blogs recently were about rebranding and selling your brand despite social distancing. Last week, we had a great chat on the live cast about the Wheel of Time series. And thanks to your recommendations, I have actually started reading the Wheel of Time. So I'm 17% of the way through book 1 right now. Tomorrow, I will be on 2 podcasts, one with, or I think they're both YouTube channels, actually. One is Meeple Mentor, and one is Going Analog. And I'm looking forward to both. Meeple Mentor is kind of just a random chat, and Going Analog, we're going to talk about a few different subjects, like our favorite Uwe Rosenberg game, how we feel about failing forward in cooperative campaign games, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And the last thing, I tried Board Game Arena for the first time. We played Dice Forge on it last week, and this week we're going to try Terra Mystica on it. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised with the platform. If you haven't tried Board Game Arena, it's essentially a full AI platform for games. It's not overly fancy, but the graphics are totally fine. The interface is really nice and fairly intuitive, and I was really pleased with it. I think for right now, I would generally play for games that I already know, but I am having a friend teach me Signori next week. I'm going to try a game for the first time that I don't know at all on the platform, and I'll see how that goes. But I highly recommend it. And if you have a favorite game that you play on Board Game Arena, I'd love to hear what it is. Again, it works really well for that particular platform. Okay, I'm going to go back to the questions here. Again, if I missed something, feel free to repeat it. I know that I missed a ton of questions even while I've been talking right here. But I'm going to scroll down a little bit just so it doesn't do the auto scroll up and makes me miss questions. Krista says, what's the retail release date versus the pre-order delivery date for Pie in the Sky? The retail release date is June 19th, and we'll be shipping Pie in the Sky starting next week. So next week is the first week of May compared to June 19th. The only caveat there is that our fulfillment center is fairly limited right now. So they are shipping around 150 products a day. And it's probably going to take them a few weeks to get through the pre-order, but you'll still receive the game about a month before the retail release date, or the expansion if you order it from us. People are joking about a 2-foot penguin now. Eric just noticed that I did slip a Between Two Castles expansion listing on our progress chart in the newsletter. Keen eye there, Eric. Yes, we are working on a Between Two Castles expansion now. Fabian says, Fabian also says, did I see there's a Hook-themed game on Kickstarter? Is it Neverland themed or is it Hook-themed? If it's actually Hook-themed, then I'm definitely hooked. I need to check that out. Okay, I'm scrolling down here a little bit to find the questions. Isaac says, what's my opinion on when a game should have a listed release date? What determines a game's release date? It's totally up to the publisher. A publisher declares the release date if they want to have one, and I would highly recommend doing that rather than just leaving it at the whim of distributors and retailers, because then they get frustrated at their publisher and at each other for receiving the games and selling at different times. So it's totally up to the publisher. In regards to Kickstarter, I would generally recommend waiting to issue a retail release date until you've finished fulfilling the rewards, and then look about a month or 2 months later at the retail release date and tell all distributors what that is, tell people what that is. But really, it's up to the publisher. The publisher can totally decide. I usually pick one that's around 2 months after our pre-order date, because that gives us plenty of time to ship the pre-orders, get them to people well before the pre-order, well before the retail release date, and to give distributors and retailers time to order and for us to process those orders and get them to the distributors, and then give the distributors time to process them and get them to retailers. Amy says, have I seen the new Dragon Tomb video, how to play Scythe? I have seen little clips of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it looked, I'm glad you thought it was funny. Derek Funkhauser is here. He says, I'm wondering what you think about release dates. Oh, another question about release dates. So I was just talking about that, Derek. Derek says, if a game fulfills some Kickstarter pledges in 2019, but the street retail date is 2020, how do you believe that should be clarified among Board Game Geek, Board Game Atlas, etc., in terms of the actual release date of the game? That's a good question. I would lean towards the wide availability for the game versus the Kickstarter availability, unless the Kickstarter is for 20,000 copies, and then there's only 2,000 copies for the retail release date. Then you do have a pretty wide release there for the bulk of the Kickstarter copies if they were delivered in 2019, and I would call that a 2019 release. But I could really see either way there, Derek. I could see it going either way. I think in terms of awards, if you're thinking of awards, most awards look at the retail release date, not the Kickstarter release. As Chad says, the push and pull aspect of the one airship sounds a lot like the Wind Spirit in the Onitama Way of the Wind expansion. I played Onitama, but I haven't played the Way of the Wind. I haven't played. I think I've only played Onitama once or twice, but I haven't played the expansion to it, as far as I know. Tony says, "What was my favorite childhood toy, not a game, that I loved the most?" My favorite toy. I read a lot as a kid, but I also played a lot of soccer, so I'll go with a soccer ball. Arthur says, my recent videos have been leaning towards digital games. I saw this before, Arthur. Thank you for repeating this question. I'm sorry I missed it before. I feel like Arthur says, I feel like you in general are more open to these kinds of games. Would you be willing to design a digital board game with the digital components in the near future? I actually talked about this in one of the videos. And one of the reasons I've been making more videos about that recently is that I haven't had the opportunities to play games in person with anyone other than Megan recently. So I have looked at other formats, including playing games digitally. I still greatly prefer to play games in person. And in the video that you may have seen about board games that use apps, that was my Sunday sit down video 2 weeks ago. I talked about why Stonemaier Games probably won't ever do that, but I'll never say never. It is possible that could change in the distant future. Jeff says he runs the Mace gaming events in North Carolina. Any plans, thoughts, ideas, changes on supporting game conventions as we all come out of this? I think the way that I love supporting game conventions is through play and wins. I still, that's my favorite way to support game conventions. I think that's the way that we'll continue to do so. And I'm hoping that any conventions over the last couple months or any conventions that need to be delayed still use the games that we donated to them for play and win for that purpose when they eventually are able to host the convention. Just scrolling down here, looking at questions. If you have any questions about the topics that I mentioned really rapidly there for a few minutes ago, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Zach says, he repeated his question that I answered before. That's good. Let's see. Giancarlo says that he really loves Scythe and Arkham Horror, the card game. What I really like about Arkham Horror, the card game, is that it has a fan base that creates custom scenarios with great stories. Is there any chance to implement this in Scythe or to create a sort of spin-off where the Scythe setting is maintained? I love, while we're done creating content for Scythe, the tabletop game, I love seeing fan-created content for it. And so every now and then I see in the Scythe Facebook group that someone's designed a new faction or a new module or something like that. And so I love to see that. And anyone is welcome to do that if they want to tell stories. One thing that people have experimented with a little bit that you could take here is to have the encounters tell a story, a specific story, a progressive story, rather than a random story by drawing random encounters. I guess it is possible. It is not out of the realm of possibility that I will design another game in the Scythe world in the future. And I love your feedback here about enabling, creating a platform where fans can create custom scenarios. Scott says that Clans of Caledonia is awesome on Board Game Arena. I'll have to try that. It's been a while since I played Clans of Caledonia. Kyle says, did I enjoy not having to deal with a pain in Dice Forge? Yeah, I recently I put Dice Forge on my games with my favorite dice games list. I love Dice Forge, but it is painful to get the little plastic pieces off. So when I played the Board Game Arena version, I didn't have to worry about that pain. However, I lost the pleasure of actually playing those dice that I've built in Dice Forge, rather than having the computer roll them for me. So little give and take there, the dice in Dice Forge. Chad says that he loves Puerto Rico on Board Game Arena because it takes care of all the little rules and triggers. That is one of the nice things about digital games. You don't have to, they can take care of all those triggers and ongoing abilities, so you don't have to remember them. Justin says, when designing, I had a great chat with Justin just the other day, and Melissa, sister Melissa, on their podcast, Room 51. Is that right, Justin? It's something 51. I think it's Room 51, maybe Board 51. Justin, please correct me in the comments over there. Justin says, when designing, how do you know when your mechanisms fit the theme of the game? Yeah, this is actually one of the topics that we talked about the other day on the podcast. Justin might be queuing me up for that. So we talked about the idea of games where the themes help you learn and retain the mechanisms because they're intuitive. When I'm designing games and I think about that, it's typically part of my brainstorming process. I mesh the mechanisms and the themes together in the same brainstorming process. They're not separate entities during that process, and so I think that really helps. But it does really matter when it starts to matter the most when I start playtesting the game and when I really start refining those mechanisms and paying attention to does a player question the theme when they use a mechanism? Does a player question the relevancy of a mechanism in relation to the theme as they're playing it? So I'm kind of paying attention to playtesters throughout that process and seeing what questions they ask. Mike says, do I think there's room for board game themes with a mental illness theme? That's a great question. In fact, I this week's Sunday Sit Down video is about sensitive topics, and I would put mental illness in that category. There is a game. There are a couple games that I don't know if this is quite in that category, but there's a game about coming out of a coma. Someone can mention the name in the comments. It has like a person's name in the name of the game. I haven't played it. Not quite mental illness, but in the probably the same sensitive realm as that. So, Mike, I would say yes, but maybe watch my video first this Sunday to get some ideas of how to approach that sensitive topic with compassion, as I'm sure you would. So I think it would be a tough topic to put in a game, but maybe an important one if people are able to learn about mental illness through it, while it's still somehow being a fun game. That's the challenge. It's still being a fun game because mental illness itself is not fun. So that's a tough balance. Depends on your intent with the game, what your goal of the game is. Brian says, Rolling Realms version 10. Did I change wingspan? 1 star for exceeding the bird number, bonus star for matching it. I don't have it up on my computer right now. I can't remember. I think so. Maybe that might have been one of the changes. I changed it like right after the playtest last week, and I've been focusing on a couple other games since then. So I don't remember, Brian, but that's a great question. Pell says, would it be possible to have a discount by purchasing 4 copies of the Scythe Metal mechs? I appreciate you asking, but no, they're very expensive to make. And so regardless of the number that you buy, they cost us the same to make. And so we're not able to offer a discount on them. Gerald says that Solkin works well on Board Game Arena. Solkin's one of my favorites, so I might need to give that a try on Board Game Arena as well. So Justin's pointing out that I'm on a podcast with Room. So it is Room 51, the Room 51 podcast. We recorded that one earlier this week, and that podcast is going live tomorrow. The podcast I'm on tomorrow won't go live until the future. So if you want to listen to a podcast with me tomorrow, check out the Room 51 podcast that Justin's mentioned here. And then in the future, maybe next week, you can look for the Meeple Mentor. That's on video. That might come out right away on YouTube. That's for Meeple Mentor. And then Going Analog, that podcast will go live, I assume, sometime next week. Mario says, do I have any plans, any expansions or new games? Do I plan on any expansions or new games of Viticulture? We are actually considering maybe 1, maybe even 2 expansions for Viticulture, not designed by me. I'm serving more of as a developer on these games, not as a designer. But there's one that I actually just play tested yesterday that has great potential, and it adds a huge twist to Viticulture. While I don't know, I don't want to give too much away, but it worked out. I mean, the core of it needs some work, but it was surprising to me how well some of the mechanisms that I put in Viticulture worked in this different format, and still felt very much like Viticulture. I don't want to give anything away because I don't even know if it's going to work yet, but I was really excited after this playtest yesterday. We have game night today. A few of the Kyle mentioned that he played On Tour via FaceTime. We're doing game night tonight, and On Tour could very well be one of the games that we play on there. Actually, if we are going to do that, I might want to mention it to my friends in advance because they need to print something out. We'll see about that. Mario says, do I plan on doing more than 1 expansion for Tapestry? I do. Yeah, I think I'm probably looking at 2 expansions for Tapestry, but there could be more in the future. We'll see. Gerald says, has Wingspan changed my mind about rounds? You know, I'm okay with games having rounds. I'm not entirely against that. It's the phases that I don't really love. For Wingspan, I think it's the right design choice to have a game with rounds because it prevented the game from being a race. That said, rounds do still break the flow of the game, and Viticulture has rounds too. So even in my own designs, I'm not entirely against it. But I really prefer games that have that. Well, I don't prefer it. I have a slight preference towards games that don't have rounds because there's no interruption in the flow of the game. Scythe, My Little Scythe, Between Two Castles has rounds. Between Two Cities has rounds. So I like half our published games have rounds. But Euphoria, Scythe, My Little Scythe. What's the other one? What's our other game? Charterstone. None of them have rounds. And so I prefer the flow that creates. So it's still my heavy preference, I would say, to have a game without rounds. But Wingspan has opened my mind up a little bit to some of the circumstances where you can't really force it. We were forcing it for a while to not have rounds. And then when we step back, and I think I sent an email to Elizabeth one day and I said, I can't believe that I'm the one saying this, but I think the game could be better if we incorporated rounds instead of having it be a race to play a certain number of birds. And the game, I think, is significantly better for that decision, the way that Elizabeth implemented it with the goals at the end of each round. Isaac says, have I played any of the Tiny Epic games? What do I think about the concept and games? I've played Tiny Epic Galaxies and Tiny Epic Quest and Tiny Epic, whatever the first one is, Tiny Epic something, Warriors, whatever the first one is. I think I enjoyed the aesthetic. Well, actually, no, I enjoyed the aesthetic of both Galaxies and Quest. None of them were, and actually the first one, the one that I'm blanking on, has one of my favorite combat mechanisms. That said, they aren't games that I've wanted to play again. I thought one play was enough for me. I thought they were fine, but I kind of wish they would come in a normal box and be a normal size rather than trying to pack so much into a small space. But I love that. I mean, they've kind of defined that publisher, and I think I'm happy that people continue to want it, and clearly there's demand for those games. So who am I to say that I want them in a more regular size, because they found a format that works really great. Adrian says, I'm wondering, since you run the design day, the Stonemaier Games design day, if you know how conventions are dealing with the cancellations. Is there insurance for them to recoup some of the money? Well, design day it's so much smaller than many of these conventions. It's only about 100 people. And if we have to cancel it, we'll just refund people, and pieces will just be open that day instead of having us attend. So there's no deposit or anything. We're very flexible. We have a great relationship with pieces. I think it's very different when you're talking about these conventions with 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, and they have to reserve hotels and convention space. My understanding is that many of these conventions kind of wait for, or they're waiting for an external entity, whether it's the hotel, the convention center, the state, to come in and say, you can't have the convention, because then they can get out of the liability for scheduling it. So some of them are kind of stuck when that isn't happening. That's my rough understanding of it, but we are not in that position with Design Day, fortunately, which is in September. Hopefully we'll still have it. John, is what game that you've played recently made you laugh the most? I've had a few chuckles in Monte Carlo Legacy, and I had a few chuckles in Forgotten Waters. Codenames, some recent games of Codenames made me laugh. Yeah, we've had fun playing Codenames online recently. Brian mentions that Seven Wonders is great on Board Game Arena. That's good to know as well. Actually, I totally forgot. I did not scroll down my own update here, my own e-newsletter. We do have the Wingspan neoprene playmats in stock in the correct size now, finally. I don't know why it took so long, but we started making them almost right away after we realized the mistake. But so if you do want the fully sized Wingspan playmats, they are available now. They're the only listed version of the playmat on our website, so you don't have to worry about accidentally getting the old ones. If you are accidentally shipped the old ones after purchasing the new ones at $8 each, let us know, and we will try to fix that, or we will fix that. Also, Between Two Cities and the middle coins are back in stock on our web store. And I talked a little bit about Viticulture Digital. We do have a few more digital implementations of our games coming out soon. The first is Viticulture Digital, and then is Wingspan Digital. From what I've heard from the developers, Viticulture Digital will be available in May. And I think I've heard that May is kind of a best case scenario for Wingspan. I think it'll more likely be June or July, but it's coming pretty soon. That isn't that long to wait at this point. Mackenzie says, any chance of t-shirts with the April Fool's Day logo? I do love that logo. It's the Stonemaier Games logo with little cat ears. I don't have any plans, but I guess if there's enough demand for it, enough interest, t-shirts are very easy to print in small quantities. So maybe I'll do that for next year's champion t-shirt or something like that, Mackenzie. Yeah, that could be fun. Mario says, who designs Sculpts minis for my games? We credit them in our game. So you can see it's a guy named Harry Berto. He runs a company called Marchin. He lives down in Mexico. He's great to work with. I'm actually waiting on an email from him right now. It's great to work with, but I haven't heard from him in about a week. Nope, still no email. Need to hear back from Heriberto because he is working on some more miniatures for us. He's great, though, other than maybe sometimes being a little slow on email. If you ever want to work with me on anything, email me quickly in response, like within 24 hours. Don't wait a long time to email me back. That's like my biggest gripe with anyone I work with is if they take too long to respond. That's a huge red flag. In fact, if I am starting to work with someone, if this was the beginning of my relationship with Heriberto, I would move on to work with somebody else. But because I know how great he is, and I know that he will eventually respond, I'm happy to keep working with him. Arthur says, I'd rather design a game that leaves an epic impression but has a lifetime of 5 to 10 playthroughs, or just an amazing game that has a lifetime of 20 to 40 playthroughs. I feel like the board game industry in general tends to lean towards less replayability. Which he says for him, that sucks for him because he really loves to dig through and explore games. I think it depends on the experience you're designing for. Like if the game is just, I guess that's kind of what you're saying. If the game is better at 5 to 10 plays, and that's the full experience, I'm okay with that. If the game is better for a ton of replayability, maybe asymmetry, things like that, then I think it's better designed for more plays. So I really think it depends on the design intent. Yeah. Let's see. Just scrolling down, looking at more questions here. I'll actually refresh. Yeah, there are plenty of questions. So I'll keep going with questions today. I did cover a bunch of topics very quickly. Maybe I'll repeat them in a minute if I run out of questions. Cody says, I noticed some expansions for your games originally start with fan-made expansions. Other than Stonemaier Games' recent submission requirements, how do you vet these and decide which ones make the cut to canon? Really, if I am struggling for an idea for an expansion, or I just don't have any ideas, or I'm not even thinking about ideas for an expansion, and I see in one of our Facebook groups that someone posts an expansion that they have actually worked on more than just an idea. It's got to be more than just an idea, something that they've come up with and actually tested. And every now and then, I mean, there's no process to it. Every now and then I see these ideas and I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually a really, really cool idea. When that happens, I reach out to the person and I try to work with them. That's what happened with the Wind Gamut. That's what happened with, that's what happened with the Rise of Fenris. It's happening in a way with a Viticulture expansion, and it's happening with a Tapestry expansion. So I think the key is if you have an idea for an expansion for one of our games or for any publisher, to not just have the idea, but make a prototype, play test it, refine it even just a little bit. You don't have to go too deep into the process, but refine it a little bit and then post it publicly, share it with people and see how excited they are. Post it in a way that the publisher can see it, like in a Facebook group or on Board Game Geek, and just see what happens. Some great things can happen from that. As found the game that I'm talking about, it's called Holding On, The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr. Mary says it as well. Thank you. And John, thank you all for doing that. Thunder says, have I played Glory to Rome? What are my thoughts? I have not actually played Glory to Rome. I probably should, though. That's kind of a classic game at this point. Let's see. Maxime says, am I sure there will be no more content for Scythe? Well, actually, when I say I'm not designing any more content for the Scythe, we do have a fan-made full rule book for Scythe, like a complete rule book that includes all the rules, all answers questions, like frequently asked questions about different modules, about specific cards. It's 136 pages. It's a giant book of all the Scythe rules all in one place and organized in such a way that you don't have to like hunt through for different factions. Like all the faction rules are in one place. All the mech rules are in one place in the book. That is something that I wasn't expecting, but I'm really pleased with what these fans did to create it. So I decided to print it. So we are making that for Scythe. But beyond that, I have no plans for more Scythe content. Okay. Oh, Sarah has, this is the first answer I've seen about the question I asked about having enough games of a certain genre. So I want to read this. Sarah says, in regards to not getting a game because of games that you have that already use that genre or mechanism so well, Sarah says that we have and love junk art. So when we see new games that have to do with dexterity and stacking pieces, we typically don't even look at them because junk art does it so well. especially with the different city goals and it being both cooperative and competitive. I think that's a great example. Yeah. If you have your favorite dexterity game, does that make you want more or less other dexterity games? Travis says he very much likes the Stonemaier token containers that are for sale. Why are they sold in such small quantity on your site, and then we can buy them cheaper and in packs of 10 from Top Shelf Gamer? Yeah, that's a great question. It's because the way that we currently sell them, they're essentially replacement parts for games. They're extra components that come with Wingspan or with Scythe, and then we kind of package them up and send them out. What we're doing, though, is that after we did, I don't have it right here, but after we made the Wingspan brown containers, the same version of these containers, but in brown, we found that they packed really nice in sets of 5 in this perfectly square box. And so in the future, it won't be for a few months because we're just starting this now, unless you want the brown versions. We are packing them in sets of 5 and selling them that way on our website from now on. Top Shelf Gamer, I can't remember exactly how our relationship with them works with these containers, because they've bought our Realistic Resource brand, but they didn't buy the container brand. So I think it's just we still have an arrangement for them that they can sell those containers. But basically, we are revamping that a little bit and refining it. Yeah. Yoa says, do you have any plans to create games with economic themes or mechanisms like Brass or Barrage? I would say, I mean, those are deep economic games. Probably not. That's not a theme that I gravitate towards. I do enjoy having games that have economic aspects to them, as many of my games do. Many of my games have currencies that you need to decide when is the best time to spend those currencies, but not on the level of Brass or Barrage. Brian says, am I using a standing desk? Yeah, I'm standing up right now. This is my Uplift standing desk. I usually stand up during videos, except for my Sunday sit-down video when I can just sit down and talk for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or so. Gerald says, what's my favorite type of pie? Favorite type of pie? Probably French silk, chocolate French silk, or chocolate peanut butter. He says, and do I have a fantastical pie in the sky idea that you'd love to make real but don't have the means to? That was once the case, but now I am working on that game. So I have the means to make my pie in the sky idea come true. Matthias says, how did it all start out with the Automa Factory? Hopefully I won't get any elements of this wrong, but in brief, Morton was someone who became involved. So Morton's a complete stranger back in 2012. He became involved in the Viticulture Kickstarter campaign because he had recently visited Tuscany, and he happened to be a solo gamer. And he started to kind of poke at the game a little bit and say, there's potential for solo here. And he was a great volunteer, and Morton is now kind of a part-time employee for Stonemaier Games. But he volunteered. He has a really great attention for detail. And when I went to design the Tuscany expansion, I went to Morton and said, Morton, why don't you try out one of these ideas? Why don't you make a solo mode and we'll put it in this expansion? And so Morton designed this Automa system, this intelligent non-player character that can be applied to different games in different ways. He has to essentially redesign it for every game, but he always goes for the feeling of a character without the upkeep of a person actually playing the game. And he first applied it to Tuscany, and eventually that ended up in Viticulture Essential instead of Tuscany. And he has done it for many of our games since then. Yeah. Brian says he's going to try Tapestry solo for the first time. Any advice? I haven't played Tapestry solo. Morton handles all the solo stuff for our games. I just handle multiplayer. So I don't have any advice for you. Others might have some advice here. Or if you post in the Tapestry group, I'm sure there's some advice you'll get there. Steven says he finally got Slay the Spire on Switch, and he can see why it is super addicting to play. Have I played it anymore? No, I found it so addicting, even after one play, that I decided to delete it because I think I could easily get hooked on that game. Slay the Spire is a deck building kind of dungeon crawl computer game, digital game, and it's very addicting. And I need to be designing games and not playing games, or I balance the two. I do still play games pretty much every day, but I don't want to get hooked on a game, and so that's why I deleted it. But it is a really, really great game. Valerie says, why would you use playmats instead of a board? That is completely up to you, Valerie. I personally love boards unless I need to pick up cards a lot off the board. And And then playmats are just easier to pick it up, because playmats, you can kind of depress your finger into the playmat a little bit and get under the card easier than if it's laying on a perfectly flat surface like cardboard or a table. And so that's why I think a lot of people prefer playmats. But that's the main reason. We made Wingspan playmats because people asked us to. It isn't something that I probably would have made otherwise, but enough people said, I really want playmats, neoprene playmats, and so we made them. Al says, have I thought about any more collaborations with other publishers, like Between Two Castles? Not currently, no. I mean, there's one, it's not a tabletop publisher that I'm thinking about working with, but no other tabletop publishers, no. Let's see, any other questions? Zach says, who's my current pick to win Survivor? I don't want to spoil anything in case anyone's catching up on Survivor, but at the beginning of the season, my picks for the two that I thought were going to win were Sandra and Yule. Those are my picks at the beginning of the season, and I'm looking forward to tonight's episode. I'll probably watch it tomorrow because we have game night tonight. Chad says, what is my favorite game that uses 3D space very well? Oh, that's interesting. Game that uses 3D space. I don't know if there's anything in my collection. I'm sure there is, actually. I do have Men in Work over here. It's a dexterity game that uses 3D space. By default, I might have to say Men at Work right now because that's the one in my collection. That's a fun question. I don't know. I'm sure there are games that use stacking. That's 3D. I do like Planet. Planet was cool. Planet uses a big 3D magnetized world that you put magnets on. What about you? Chad, were you thinking of a specific game or games in terms of 3D space? Maybe ones that aren't dexterity. I think dexterity are games that are coming the most obvious, but there are others that use 3D space or stacking or layering in really cool ways. Douglas says, how does one get a Stonemaier t-shirt? The main place is to go on MeepleSource. If you are a Stonemaier ambassador who basically kind of represents Stonemaier games at various events, conventions, basically you wear the shirt to teach and be welcoming to people at events and conventions, then you can buy them. If you're a Stonemaier ambassador, you get a few chances every year to buy the Stonemaier shirt. And if you actually do wear it to a convention and help people with games as a semi-representative of Stonemaier games, then we will refund the purchase of the cost of the t-shirt. But we don't sell them in general. They are meant to be for people who want to actively be sharing Stonemaier games with others. Yeah, as our ambassadors do. John says, I have quite a sympathetic vibe. Does that reflect also when you play games yourself? Interesting question. I haven't thought about myself as sympathetic. Does that reflect when you play games yourself? I don't know if this quite answers your question, but the thing I can think of is that when I play games, I am very aware of how much fun other people at the table are having. And I will often make decisions in the game that are maybe based on other people's fun a little bit more than my own. I still want to have fun. I still want to be clever. I still love winning games, but I avoid doing things that create unfun experiences for other players. That might be what you're branching into there. And that, I would say, is true for the most part. James says, does that mean there is potential for more side expansions down the line? No, there really isn't. We've completed the Scythe story. And the only thing that I will consider is a completely different game in the Scythe universe, in the 1920 plus universe that Jakob created. Al says, do I have any recommendations on making cost-effective prototypes? Cost-effective prototypes. For me, fortunately, I have Joe now. Joe makes the prototypes for me, but I bought a printer, a pretty solid color printer, and pretty much everything is paper and printing paper on there. I would not, I mean, so it doesn't add up that much other than the initial cost of the printer. It's mostly just paper. And my cutter pillar, I don't know if you can kind of see that. I have a little cutter pillar, paper cutter. So those expenses aren't that much. I would recommend if you play any legacy games where you're done with the campaign, take the components out of them and use those components for your prototypes. You really don't need fancy components for prototypes. In fact, that's a great way to test if the theme of the game is coming through. If you have just like cubes, that you're using for a bunch of different components for the prototype that will eventually be things like miniatures or custom dice or whatever they're going to be. And players still feel the theme despite there not being art or basic elements. That's a great sign. And if they're not feeling the theme, that can be a sign that you need to incorporate the theme a little bit more into the designs, into the mechanisms. At least I found that to be a nice test. That's why, like, while designing Tapestry, I made sure not to put any of the art, even though we had the art for part of the process. I didn't put any of the art on the cards because I wanted to see if the cards still felt like they were echoing what I said they were representing in the game as players played. John says, what did I do for my last date night with my girlfriend before lockdown started? And we still have date nights. They're just at home. What did we do before lockdown started? We probably went out to a restaurant. I don't even remember this one. It's been so long. Feels like it's been years, but it's only been, what, a month and a half? But yeah, I don't remember exactly. I'll have to check with Megan to ask. John says, am I going to post some snippets of Stonemaier Games' next big game online? When I start talking about our next game, yeah, I will. Yeah. If anything, I will post maybe some hints about our next game on Instagram. So if you want to follow Jamie Stegmaier on Instagram, at some point, I'm sure I will drop a hint on there, a hint or two about our next game. But it'll be after the buzz dies down a little bit about Pie in the Sky, because right now our focus is on this and the pre-order for this. Mike says that sometimes we use game trays and other times we just have non-game trays, like in Tapestry. How do I decide when to use them for custom trays and when not to? I feel like custom trays add a ton of wow factor to a game. Well, we do have a very much a custom tray in Tapestry, but the nature of it was designed around the miniatures, and I didn't have those miniatures to make available for game trays. And plus, the insert didn't need to be too complicated. It was just like, we need the miniatures to fit in this insert. So we do have a beautiful custom tray in Tapestry. It just isn't designed by game trays. Mario says, how do I decide who will create the art for my games? Well, it really depends. I kind of just have it really depends. So if it's my own game design, I usually pick the artist. I decide one that I think just fits the style of the game, that fits the mechanisms. If I'm working with a designer, I might come up with a few artists, or I might ask them for the style that they're visualizing for the world, and I'll see if I agree, and then see if I can find an artist for that style. I have a long list of artists. If you go to our website and look for, if you go to stonemeiergames.com and look for 200 plus artists and graphic designers that I love, you'll see a great list. I often refer to that list. I also look on Board Game Geek. Pay attention to art in other games, and I see, okay, I really love this art. Someday I want to work with this artist on this specific game, or a game, any game. That's one. There's a game that we have in the works where there's an artist that I just wanted to work with for a long time, and with a specific theme, in fact. And so I finally got to reach out to that artist and work on that theme with them. Dexter said, did I miss an update on the Tapestry expansion? No, you didn't miss anything there. I didn't update anything about the Tapestry expansion. Thomas says, can we have the smallest piece that I can reveal about the Tapestry expansion? I'll say that it will be released in 2020. The Wingspan expansion is going to be kind of touch and go. It's going to be pretty close whether or not we make it in 2020, but the Tapestry expansion definitely will be available in 2020. Sarah says, I seem to really love role players and cartographers, and I do. She says, do I also like Lockup? I haven't played it. It was one game that a friend brought right before the lockdown happened, so I haven't gotten to play Lockup in lockdown. Diego says he bought Viticulture Essential Edition. Is there... Oh, I see. Steve already answered that question. Thank you, Stephen. Yoa says, what are my top 3 Stonemaier games? I have 9 favorites, and they're all published. They're all of our games. It's hard for me to narrow it down to just 3. I really can't. It's like my kids or my cats, although I do have a favorite cat. Biddy's definitely my favorite. But Walter's a good boy too. All right. Any other questions today? Thank you so much for joining with these questions. I'm sorry if I missed your question and I didn't catch the repeat of it. On these busy days, on newsletter days, more people join us than normal, and so we have more questions, more comments, and Facebook scrolls past them a little faster. Jeffrey says, have I ever thought about reproducing a card crafting like Jean Claire's game, The Edge of Darkness. He has a couple in this series, including The Edge of Darkness and Mystic Vale. I've thought about it, and I love actually seeing what Canvas is doing on Kickstarter right now. But the playtesting process for that is pretty daunting. I don't know how I would playtest those games. So I love the idea, but I don't know if we'd pursue that because I don't really know how to playtest it, how to prototype it more. Yeah. Chad mentions games like Tang Garden and Photosynthesis for 3D elements. I love that. That's kind of a spatial 3D element used in both of those games. That's a great example. I really need to play Tang Garden. Douglas actually mentioned Canvas. He says, what do I think of the transparent feature of Canvas on Kickstarter? Do I think it'll be useful in games? I love it. I think it first showed up in Gloom, and I love what Canvas is doing, that you can create these little pieces of art that have set meanings of set collection as you play the game. I was a backer the instant I saw that. And I'm a backer because I think it's very tough to design it. I think it's tough to prototype that type of thing. And I'd love to actually hear about that prototyping process. I'm guessing they taped on plastic, or they found a way to print on clear plastic at home. I don't think my printer does that, but maybe they found a way to make it work. Oh, thank you, Cody, for posting that link to the post about artists. Brett also asked about my favorite non-Stonemaier game. I can definitely say that. My favorite non-Stonemaier game. My most recent top 10 had Clank as my number 1. If you look on YouTube for I believe it was in March when I did my most recent top 10 favorite games ever as of March, you'll see the others on that list. But Clank was number 1 at the time. Joe says, did I consider designing a scenario for Frosthaven? I did not, Joe. Isaac actually asked me for the original Gloomhaven, and at the time I was very busy with Scythe and couldn't do it. I eventually did design a fan expansion for Gloomhaven that kind of exemplified what I was hoping to get from Gloomhaven that I didn't get from the game. But no, I don't have time to do one for Frosthaven. Hopefully there's some cool guest designers participating though. Matt says, will there ever be new Scythe stuff like a new expansion trilogy, or is what we already have what we'll always have? Yeah, other than the rule book that we're coming out with, a full rule book, there won't be any more content for Scythe. However, there might be someday a new game in the Scythe world that's completely different than the Scythe, a completely new game, but in that world. Mohammed says that he just tried ordering Milo Scythe shipping to Saudi Arabia, and the website said the shipping location is not available, despite ordering previously with no problem. Let me check with Joe about that. Joe has found that there are a few regions that we've tried to ship to recently, including, I believe, Russia, Brazil, and South America, and maybe Saudi Arabia, that we haven't been able to ship successfully to. We've had returns, too many returns. So I will check with Joe to see if that is the issue there. I'll make a note about that. Thank you for asking about that, and I'm sorry you've had issues with it. Feel free to check back in a couple hours, and if it still doesn't work, it means that we're not able to ship there. Looks like I just reached the end of the questions for today. Thank you so much for joining me today for this live cast, and thank you for supporting the Pie in the Sky expansion. Hobie worked really hard on this, and Harry Berto did a great job with the sculpts. I'm excited to hear the adventures that you have while playing with this expansion. And thank you again, Cody, for posting another video that I referenced here. I'm going to throw this up on YouTube. If you have any other questions or comments, check on YouTube in about an hour, and feel free to post them there. I'll get updates from YouTube about questions there, while YouTube doesn't send me, or Facebook doesn't send me updates. All right, take care. Have a great Wednesday. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next week. Bye.